sex, violence, taboo love, and social rebellion. The 1990s gave us Bollywood films so controversial that riots broke out, theatres were burned, and the Supreme Court had to intervene. These weren't just movies, they were cultural earthquakes that shook the very foundation of Indian society. Today we're counting down 5 Bollywood films from the 90s and 2000s that were so bold, so unapologetically raw, and they're still considered too hot to handle. Films that ask the question, how far is too far for art? And trust me, the answers will shock you, as most people haven't even heard of the top 2, and even fewer have been able to watch it. This is CelebrAsian, and you're about to discover why some truths are too dangerous for cinema. Please note that today's video discusses mature themes, including censorship, violence, and controversial and sensitive subject matter. Proceed with caution as we explore these important stories from cinema history. Before we dive into these cinematic bombshells that had the entire nation shocked, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell, because controversial content like this gets buried by algorithms, and we need your support. From lesbian love stories that sparked nationwide riots to rape revenge sagas that got banned by government, these films didn't just push boundaries, they redefined them. Let's count down the 5 most controversial movies of the 90s and 2000s. Apni kursi ki peti bandh lo, mausam bigadne wala hai. Starting our countdown at number 5, Meera Nair's Kama Sutra, A Tale of Love, a film so sexually explicit that it spent 2 years fighting through courts just to get an adults-only certificate with massive cuts. Here's what makes this controversial. Meera Nair didn't just make an erotic film, she made a feminist statement about female sexuality in 16th century India, but the Central Board of Film Certification saw it as pornography disguised as art. The film was banned completely before being grudgingly passed with an A certificate in 1997, but only after brutal cuts to nudity and intimate scenes. Even A.R. Rahman refused to compose for it, fearing international audiences would brand him the Kama Sutra composer. The irony, while India rejected its own cultural heritage, the film gained massive international acclaim and was nominated for prestigious awards. It screened at Cannes while being banned in the country it represented. The question remains, was India protecting its culture or suppressing it? At number 4, we have Shekhar Kapoor's Bandit Queen, a film so brutally honest about caste violence and sexual assault that the real-life subject fought to get her own story banned. This wasn't just controversial for its graphic content, it was controversial for exposing the ugly truth about rural India that the establishment wanted to hide. Multiple rape scenes, explicit nudity, and unflinching violence made censors squirm. But here's the real story. Phulan Devi herself called the film exploitative, claiming Shekhar Kapoor had restaged her rape without permission. Author Arundhati Roy famously asked, "What gives anyone the right to restage the rape of a living woman?" The film was temporarily banned, faced legal challenges, and sparked nationwide debates about consent, exploitation, and artistic freedom. Phulan only withdrew her objections after Channel 4 paid her £40,000, essentially buying her silence. Despite winning the National Film Award and representing India at the Oscars, the question haunts the film: when does bold storytelling become exploitation? Kapoor claimed he was giving voice to the voiceless, but critics argued he was profiting from a woman's trauma. Claiming the number 3 spot is Deepa Mehta's Fire, the film that literally set India on fire. This wasn't just controversial, it was revolutionary, and the backlash was swift and violent. Fire did something no mainstream Indian cinema had dared. It put a lesbian relationship at the center of its story. 2 sisters-in-law, trapped in loveless marriages, find passion in each other's arms. Sounds progressive. Not to India in 1998. The reaction was explosive. Shiv Sena activists stormed theaters, tore down posters, and literally set fire to cinema halls. Their battle cry, "If women's needs are fulfilled through lesbian acts, marriage will collapse and human reproduction will stop." But here's what makes this truly controversial. The film exposed a cultural contradiction. The same industry that glorifies sleazy item songs, where a single woman is objectified for the visual pleasure of a large group of men, and a country that has a rich history of diverse expressions of love, couldn't handle 2 women kissing on screen. The Supreme Court had to intervene to allow screenings. International celebrities supported the film while domestic audiences remained divided. Deepa Mehta received death threats but refused to back down. Today, 27 years later, India has partially decriminalized homosexuality, but Fire remains a lightning rod. It didn't just break cinema barriers, it shattered social taboos and forced a nation to confront its own prejudices. The silver medal goes to Anurag Kashyap's directorial debut, Paanch, a film so dark and uncompromising surprising that it remains unreleased even today, 21 years after completion. This isn't just controversial, it's cursed. Based on real events involving a band called Parikrama and a brutal murder case, Paanch showed India's urban youth in their rawest form. Drugs, violence, moral ambiguity, and complete rejection of traditional values. The Central Board of Film Certification demanded 89 cuts from the film. 89! They wanted to remove almost every scene of drug use, violence, and profanity, essentially gutting the entire film. But here's what makes this truly controversial. Kashyap refused to make the cuts, calling them artistic murder. The film has been stuck in legal limbo for over 2 decades, becoming Bollywood's most famous unreleased movie. Despite never getting a theatrical release, Paanch gained cult status through film festivals and bootleg copies. Critics who've seen it call it a masterpiece, but Indian audiences may never get the chance to judge for themselves. It represents the ultimate question: can a film be too realistic for its own good? Paanch's crime wasn't being fictional, it was being too truthful about India's dark underbelly. And taking the controversial crown is Sridhar Rangayan's The Pink Mirror, a film so ahead of its time that it dared to explore India's transgender and drag community when homosexuality was still criminalized and completely taboo. This wasn't just groundbreaking, it was revolutionary. Made in 2003 when Section 377 was still in full force, The Pink Mirror gave voice to a community that mainstream Bollywood pretended didn't exist. The film couldn't get a mainstream release because distributors feared backlash. It survived through underground screenings, LGBT film festivals, and word of mouth in a community starved for representation. What makes this our number one is its sheer courage. Rangayan didn't just make a film about the gay community, he celebrated it with humor, color, and unapologetic joy. When doing so could have meant legal trouble. Today, with Section 377 partially struck down and LGBTQ+ representation slowly entering mainstream cinema, The Pink Mirror stands as a pioneer that paved the way for acceptance. This tops our list because it didn't just push boundaries, it completely redefined what Indian cinema could be, proving that some stories are too important to be silenced no matter how uncomfortable they make society. From lesbian love to vigilante violence, from sexual liberation to historical trauma, these 5 films didn't just entertain, they forced conversations that society wasn't ready to have. The real question is, are we more liberal today, or are we still afraid of uncomfortable truths? When Padmavat faced similar protests in 2018, it proved that Indian cinema's relationship with controversy hasn't changed much. These films remind us that art's job isn't to convert, it's to challenge, provoke, and sometimes disturb. They paid the price for being ahead of their time. Which of these films do you think crossed the line? Were they brave artistic statements or dangerous provocations? And here's a real question: should art be censored to protect social harmony, or should truth always be told regardless of consequences? Share your opinions in the comments, but keep it respectful. If you enjoyed this deep dive into cinema's dangerous side, smash that like button and subscribe for more content that doesn't shy away from uncomfortable truths. Until next time, this is CelebrAsian. More stars, more stories, one Asia. And sometimes the most important stories are the ones that you don't want to hear.